Relationships are all about learning the right tools, not just for yourself, not just for the relationship, but to also support your partner as well. But when it comes to emotions, it can be difficult to know what tools to use, especially when it comes to trying to repair a relationship with your partner. So in this video, I want to break down how to support a partner who is dealing with anxiety. In the thousands of members that I've worked with in my entire career, one of the most common things that can come up is how to support a partner who's struggling with anxiety. Sometimes it can be difficult to know what to do, what to say, and how to support them in order to continue to rebuild the relationship. And I get it. It can be really difficult to know what to do because at the end of the day, you don't want to make it worse. You also don't want to do nothing. So the first thing that we need to do is to understand exactly what anxiety is. When you have a partner who struggles with anxiety, anxiety is more than just being worried. It is your brain and your body responding as if there's a threat, even when there isn't one. It can show up in a lot of different ways: racing thoughts, restlessness, irritability, panic, or exhaustion. Anxiety changes how someone thinks, how they feel, and how they react. So it can affect the way that they interact in relationships too. But there are really common mistakes that I see again and again in people who are trying to support a partner with anxiety. The first mistake is taking it personally. This is not personal. People with anxiety often get irritable, they get distant, or they can get withdrawn. It can be easy to take it personally, to think that it's all about you. But usually this is more about their own inner stress, not your actions. But that doesn't mean that your actions don't have an impact. And we'll talk more about that a little later on in the video. The second mistake is trying to fix them. The truth is that anxiety isn't something that you can just talk away or solve with some advice. Oftentimes people make the mistake of trying to jump in, trying to fix their partner's anxiety. This can be common. I deal with a lot of people who are repairing a relationship after a breakup, and I can see this over and over again. It's making the mistake of trying to jump in to fix their anxiety, thinking that it's going to help to repair the relationship. But oftentimes this can actually make your partner feel dismissed or even more anxious. The third mistake is ignoring it or minimizing it. Saying things like calm down or just relax can make your partner feel really, really unheard. It invalidates their experience and it breaks trust. This is especially important if you're trying to repair a relationship. So it's important to approach anxiety properly with understanding, with patience, and with presence to help your partner feel safe and supported. And this strengthens the relationship because it builds trust and emotional safety, which is what I speak about on the channel. I'll link to a video up above and in the description down below on emotional safety because it's such a core, crucial concept. But most importantly, approaching it in the right way allows co-regulation, meaning that you can both manage your emotions better together. Getting this wrong can make anxiety worse. This can create more conflict and it can make your partner feel isolated, ultimately pushing them away in the long term. Sometimes a partner can not even tell you that they have anxiety. They may not even be able to label it as anxiety. So it's important to look out for the symptoms of this so you can understand what to do and how to help support them through this. The acronym for the symptoms of anxiety is WIPER, W-I-P-E-R. I want to break down what are the symptoms, what are the things to look for in a partner who may be struggling with anxiety. The first letter is W. W is worry. So your partner can have persistent or looping thoughts that often focus on what-if scenarios. And this happens because ultimately anxiety activates the amygdala, which is the part of the brain which detects threats. It's the threat detection system. And this makes the mind scan for danger even when nothing may be actually happening in that moment. And this worry can show up in overanalyzing conversations or decisions, imagining worst-case scenarios, looking for reassurance, or even difficulty letting go of some thoughts. But the next sign that there could be anxiety is irritability. So irritability is feeling tense, frustrated, or easy to set off. And this irritability happens because when your nervous system is on high alert, even small stresses can feel really overwhelming. This means that emotional regulation, so managing your emotions and being able to rein them in a little bit more, becomes more difficult. So this irritability can show up in snapping at you or other people, withdrawing, feeling on edge for no immediate reason, getting upset over things that wouldn't normally bother you necessarily or even bother them. That's how irritability can show up. But the next is the P, which is panic. So panic is a sudden or even ongoing kind of physical reactions linked to perceived threat or intense fear. So this panic happens because external stresses that can trigger an anxiety attack or a strong emotion, this can trigger a fight or flight response. And this floods the body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And this can show up with a rapid heartbeat, chest tightness, shallow breathing, dizziness, trembling, panic attacks, feeling like something bad is about to happen. This panicked feeling can be very physical. It can be one of the more obvious signs. And it's important to recognize this because when you're seeing actual physical symptoms happen, that's usually when things are at a very extreme level. And this is where things are most sensitive, and it's crucial how you respond to this. But another symptom can be exhaustion. So exhaustion is like a deep tiredness or fatigue that lingers even after there's been a lot of rest. This exhaustion happens because when anxiety is constant, it keeps the brain and body in a constant state of readiness. It's constantly on high alert, and this is draining. It drains those energy reserves over time. So when you're experiencing a high period of anxiety, the body is on 100% of the time. And that's why this exhaustion can set in. This exhaustion can show up in difficulty focusing or staying awake, low motivation or feeling burned out, needing more rest but feeling less restored after that rest. And then finally, the last symptom can be restlessness. This is a feeling of being unable to relax. So you may feel exhausted, but still feel unable to actually get settled. This can be fidgeting or mental kind of agitation. This happens because when anxiety hits the brain, it struggles to switch off. This is creating constant inner stimulation. And this can show up in trouble sitting still, pacing, fidgeting, needing to constantly be doing something even though you're exhausted, feeling super alert even when you're absolutely exhausted. It can also be thoughts moving so fast that it's hard to concentrate or sleep. So these are some of the symptoms to look out for, to be able to recognize if your partner struggles with anxiety. So then that leaves the question, what do we do? How do we help support a partner with anxiety in a way that is effective but also helps the relationship as well? I've broken this down into multiple steps. The first step is to make sure that you develop a secure relationship with yourself. Now, this may sound a little bit unusual because at the end of the day, if it's your partner struggling with it, why is it so important to develop a secure relationship with yourself? Ultimately, this is building your own emotional stability and self-awareness. The reason for this is that you can't help regulate somebody else's nervous system if yours is all over the place. This step is important because if you cannot handle somebody else's anxiety, if you take it personally, if you can't see it for what it is, it's going to be difficult for you to be able to provide any real support or stability for your partner who is struggling with this. People can fall into this blame mindset during this time. They struggle with anxiety. It's not my problem. It's not my fault. Why do I have to deal with it? The truth is, in a relationship, the problem is the problem. And you can either choose to effectively deal with the problem or not. But being in a relationship and deciding by yourself what is a problem that your partner should deal with alone versus what is a joint problem, doing that by yourself is not really being part of a relationship. So this can be a lot of things. Practicing self-soothing habits, checking in with your own emotions, making sure that you're getting the emotional support outside of the relationship too. The next step is to be predictable. If someone struggles with anxiety, making sure that you're showing them through consistency that you're there even through the tough times. This is making sure that you're showing up in reliable, steady ways. The reason for this is that anxiety feeds on unpredictability. Consistency lowers the emotional threat levels in the brain. The best way to do this is making sure that you're keeping your word, you're following through on plans, you're responding calmly even when things feel tense. Making sure that you are mastering your own emotions in order to show up for your partner who may be struggling with theirs. The third step is to give them attention. When they're struggling, offer them your full, undistracted presence. The reason for this is that anxiety can come in waves, but when anxiety is high, it's important to continue to have that connection when they may not be feeling it. So connection comes from being present with someone, not just talking at them. So if they're struggling with anxiety, whether it's in a micro way, an anxiety attack, or in a macro way, making sure that you are connecting with them when you do, being present with them. This signals safety on a very primal level. So when you're talking, making sure that you're doing it at the very least on the phone, even better in person, making eye contact, setting your phone aside, staying physically and emotionally present with them. The next step is to make sure that you're validating their emotions, acknowledging and accepting your partner's feelings without judging or trying to fix them. Validation activates trust and it calms emotional defenses. This is a key part of emotional regulation. I've done a lot of videos on validation, which I'll link to in the description. Being able to validate using phrases like, that sounds overwhelming, or it sounds scary, or I can see why you'd feel that way. Making sure that you're validating what they're feeling as reality, not trying to change it or persuade them that it's not happening. Next, it's important to make sure that you're opening the door to talk about their feelings, whether it's their anxiety in general or just the individual symptoms of anxiety. But making sure that you're not forcing this conversation. Building emotional safety, gently making space for them to share their feelings, their thoughts, their worries, their fears, but at their pace. The reason for this is pressure increases anxiety, but giving them the option, the choice to open up, this increases safety. You can do this by saying, if you want to talk about it, I'm here, but there's no pressure. I don't need anything from you right now. Just give them the room to be able to open up to you in their own time. The next step is to ask what they need. Oftentimes when anxiety is present, people who maybe don't struggle with anxiety or just the partner in general can assume that they know what's best, but you'd be surprised what responses you can get from someone who struggles with anxiety. It may be very, very different from what you thought. So let them define the kind of support that actually helps them and trust that they know what their experience is and that they can make a judgment as to what is the best way to support them. The truth is that someone struggling with anxiety, it can make your own assumptions about that very tricky. Asking removes all of the guesswork and it gives your partner agency to be able to make their own choices, right? So for example, you can say, hey, right now, do you want advice? Do you want distraction? Or do you just want someone to be with you right now? Help me understand what you need right now so that I can show up better for you. In this way, you're allowing them to make the choice. You're giving them the agency and empowering them to make decisions based on their feelings. But the next step is important. If you do have advice and you want to help your partner, before offering any advice, asking yourself, do I actually have valuable advice? Now, it's important to be honest with yourself in this moment. It can be easy for someone who doesn't struggle with anxiety to make a lot of assumptions about how to handle anxiety, but without ever knowing the real life practicalities of it. So if you are looking to give advice and your partner is looking for advice, asking yourself, is what I'm about to give right now actually valuable? Is it well researched? Is it fully understanding anxiety? Being truthful with yourself as to whether this is appropriate to drop in advice. But then if you come to the conclusion that it is valuable advice, ask your partner if they want your advice. We can make a lot of assumptions, but at the end of the day, unsolicited advice that isn't wanted, does not build trust. It doesn't increase the amount of advice that is listened to. It actually decreases. If you feel like you have strong advice, but your partner doesn't want to hear it, telling them anyway and overstepping that is not going to help them listen to you in the future. In fact, it's going to make them listen to you less. So it's important to ask them if they want to hear it. They may not be in the right headspace. It may be a longer term thing. They may not trust you right now, especially if you're trying to rebuild a relationship, you're trying to rebuild trust. The advice that you offer in that moment may not be taken well. So it's important to ask. Pause before going into fix-it mode. Any unwanted advice can make people feel dismissed, not supported. You can ask in a way of, I feel like I may have something that could be useful, some advice, but is that something you're after right now? Or are you after just someone to listen? What do you need? The next step, if you think about the advice that you have and you feel like maybe it's not very high quality advice, don't feel like you have to try and say something smart. Don't feel like you have to say something to make them feel better. Don't feel like you have to fill in the gap. When someone is struggling with anxiety, trust takes a long time to build. And if you're filling in the gaps with a lot of low quality advice, a lot of smart things or fixes or funny quips or whatever it is, oftentimes it's better to just listen, to learn, and to hear about your partner's experience with anxiety rather than trying to fix it. This builds respect for your process. With members, I talk a lot about process versus outcomes. When you're focusing on your growth process and being able to develop your own self-growth, this requires a high level of input, of listening and of learning. What this does is this builds what we call intellectual intimacy. Intellectual intimacy is respect in you as a person and how you do things. When you're building intellectual intimacy within a relationship, it requires a high level of listening and learning and understanding. Sometimes people fall into this mythical idea, this myth that listening, that learning, that hearing what your partner has to say is somehow weak. It's not leadership. But actually, the strongest leaders listen more than they talk. So if you don't have any advice to give, don't try and fill that space in. Ask more questions. Get to know your partner's experience with anxiety. And this is valuable when you're trying to repair a relationship because it grows intellectual intimacy. This is what so many of my successful members have found, is that when you're growing emotional safety and intellectual intimacy at the same time, then this starts to repair the bond between you both. So I can't dig into all of it right now, but if you do want to learn more about these concepts that I'm talking about, join my Relationship Bootcamp, where you'll learn the same core elements that feed every relationship. All of my members start with these concepts in order to start rebuilding and repairing the relationship from the ground up. If you do want to join us, click on the link in the description to grab your spot. Asking more questions shows a strong process, so you don't need to fill the silence with solutions. Real support for someone struggling with anxiety is about presence, not performance. Now, sometimes when anxiety is very high, and maybe even an anxiety attack, conversations can escalate. And it's important to know how to de-escalate these conversations in order to bring the emotions down and be able to build that safe presence with your partner. I've done a deeper dive on de-escalation and how crucial it is to every relationship, especially repairing a relationship. I'm going to leave you with that deeper dive video on de-escalation, and I'll see you over there.